Welcome to On the Corner of Main Street, presented by Plaza Hotel and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Here is Plaza CEO Jonathan Jossel, Russell Aaron, Gary Vickery, and I'm your host, Lisa Melmed. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of On the Corner of Main Street. How are you guys doing today?
Amazing. Gary, how are you?
Very good. We're on lucky number 13 today.
Is there a 13th floor in the plaza?
No 13th floor.
The 13th floor.
Is that every hotel, Jonathan?
Every hotel.
Do you know why that is?
13's bad luck
No.
in many cultures. Don't want to stay on the 13th floor. But a lot of people like to bet on 13 on roulette. And then there's no in a lot of casinos there's no 4th floor or 40th floor. If you're the winner, it goes 39.50.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because 4 is bad luck in China, Chinese culture, right? Yeah.
Wow.
But this is our 13th episode. It's good to be here with you all.
I think it's good luck.
And I think we have the perfect guest for our lucky number 13 episode.
We sure do. Today we're going to talk about museums and culture and downtown Vegas. Do you guys have a favorite museum? Either in Vegas or anywhere that you've ever been.
I'm a little impartial because the Poyu, who's the big boss man of the plaza, has a nice gallery in London. And I was loosely involved with that project before I moved out here. So as an art gallery, that would be my...
Did you live in that too?
No, but some people did. You guys' favorite museums? Besides the Mob Museum, obviously, which is incredible.
Yeah, I got to go back home to the roots, and it's the Art Museum in Philadelphia. That's always been, my go-to.
I'll go Children's Museum in Symphony Park. Great experience for kids.
Do you go there a lot?
Been a couple of times with my kids. It's next door. Support local business.
I like anything air and space, man. Especially with all the space shuttles and now how they've been distributed. I want to go see wherever they're housed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like anything to do with flying.
The one in D.C. is really good.
Is it?
The Air and Space Museum.
Museum of Ice Cream. Have you been to that one?
I have not.
Is that a real thing?
Oh, it's huge. Yeah. It's huge. There's a couple of them.
I would like to go.
Yeah.
Today, we're joined by the president and CEO of the Mob Museum, the National Museum of Organized Crime and Law Enforcement, Jonathan Ullman. Welcome to On the Corner of Main Street.
Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome, Jonathan. Nice to have you here.
It's great to see you, Jonathan.
It's been a little while.
It has
been a little while since I got to see you.
Been.
Normally, I would see you sitting in here with Oscar, having a Tito's with the onion.
I do like that. Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that what you normally have?
Yeah.
Haven't seen you doing that for a little while.
Yeah, it's definitely a shame. I miss that. Miss that very much. I miss Oscar.
You haven't seen him since?
I've not.
Have you, Jonathan? Have you seen Oscar?
I actually have a funny story. I was playing golf at the Las Vegas Country Club last Sunday, and I came in after playing, and the table next to me was reserved for Carolyn Goodman, Mayor Goodman, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's July 26th. It's Oscar's birthday. And they were having his birthday lunch at the country club, and I called him to wish him happy birthday, and he was very annoyed that I was there because he didn't want to see anyone, and he didn't want anyone there at his birthday. He's like, why do you have to go to the one place where I'm having my birthday lunch? And so I waited there to see him. There was another gentleman there that you probably know because he's not allowed in the casinos.
Joey
Cusimano.
Yeah.
He's in the Black Book.
That's right. That's right.
Are you allowed to say on this thing what's he in the Black Book for, or are we not allowed to talk about that?
Well, we shouldn't talk about Joey. It's
Okay.
good to talk about Oscar.
You're
though.
right.
It's
We
good
shouldn't
to
talk about Joey.
Oscar.
But Joey was there. By coincidence, allegedly, he was there as well at the country club.
That's nice.
So I hadn't seen him for a little
That
while.
was a year ago that we had the big 80th birthday parties for Oscar, right?
We did that.
That was a big
Well,
hoo-ha
we did it
over
like the
here.
week before,
That's right.
and then we did his party, his 80th last year.
Yep.
That's right. Wow. Who knew where we'd be a year later?
Well,
Yeah.
thankfully for Oscar, he's got real sports to watch and
Yes.
bet on now.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
no more table tennis.
I think he hit a sumo wrestling three-way parlay.
Okay, so Jonathan, can you tell us how you made your way to downtown and how you got involved with the Mob Museum?
Sure. Well, it was nearly 10 years ago. It'll be 10 years in November. And I've always been in the museum industry. So I was in New York at the time when I learned about the project that was being created down here, downtown Las Vegas, the rehabilitation of the former U.S. Post Office and Federal Courthouse. So at that time, the project had, the full weight of the city behind it, and had some great individuals and companies involved in the creation of the museum. So the same people that were working on and that had built the International Spy Museum, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It was really a terrific team that was working on the project. And they had started looking for someone to come and focus on the operations. So they were far enough along that it was time to start turning attention to how the museum was actually going to be run. So
they recruited you from New York?
That's right.
The museum
right.
actually cast a bigger net across the country.
Oh yeah. It was, and at the time it was largely driven by the city. I mean, this was one of the things that was so attractive about this project is that the city was the owner of the building. They had acquired it from the federal government. When they did that, they paid $1 to the feds to get that building, which is on the National Registry of Historic Places. I mean, beautiful.
Great deal.
If you've never been to the museum or seen the building, it's gorgeous. It's one of the best examples of neoclassical architecture you'll find in Las Vegas. It was put in service in 1933, which by Las Vegas standards is old. It's not necessarily old, if you're in New York City. Mm-hmm. But out here, it's certainly one of the older structures, and it is such a beautiful historic building. When the city acquired it, they agreed that they would rehabilitate it, number one, and then repurpose it for a cultural use. So it had to be a museum of some kind. And at the time, it was, Oscar was the mayor, and he was very determined that it would be a museum about the history of organized crime.
So he really was it was his brainchild.
Yeah, I mean, we've always regarded Oscar as the chief visionary of the Mob Museum, and I think it's fair to say that there would not be a Mob Museum if it wasn't for Oscar.
Do you think he gets enough credit for that?
I do.
Given he does?
I don't.
Okay.
Well, I got to be careful now. It depends. Is he listening?
I don't think he knows how to listen to podcasts.
I think Oscar is revered, among the staff and board of the museum because, we know that not just because of his own personal history with all this, but his championing the acquisition of that building. It was his concept. He often will tell the story. City Hall was right next door. So what is now, the Zappos headquarters used to be City Hall, and he had his office up on the top floor, and he would look down and see that building, and he posed the question, what's happening with that building? And he got the city to acquire it, and there was a whole discussion about what type of museum would be created, and then finally the group landed on one that would be about the history of organized crime, primarily in Las Vegas.
Jonathan, you were working at a museum in New York.
That's right.
Which one were you running?
So at the time, I was at the National Soccer Hall of Fame and Museum.
Oh, wow. Is that still there?
It has moved.
Okay.
It's now in Texas.
The National Soccer Hall of Fame Museum.
Yeah, Hall of Fame and Museum. So I was there for about 3 years, and prior to that, I was in New Jersey at Liberty Science Center, which is a large interactive science museum.
So you would say you're a museum guy, not a mob guy.
That's right. That's right.
What do you know about the mob?
Well, I grew up in New Jersey.
What does
so there's that.
That gives you credibility?
And I'm a quick study.
So, no, but you learned about the mob coming out to you.
Absolutely, yeah.
What part of Jersey are you from?
I grew up in Morris County, and I lived for a long time in Jersey City. Went to Rutgers also, so I was down in the New Brunswick area for a while, too.
Okay.
Is it cool walking into that building every day and just like you're learning the history, and as you see it, you're like, oh, hey, there's that thing there, or there's this, is it really cool to is that the fun part of museum?
It's unbelievable because it is, I think, I never want to sound boastful, but I think the team has made an incredible museum that tells a great story and really captures as best you can the story of organized crime and law enforcement through the 20th century up through the early part of the 21st century. We get into modern issues for sure, but it's you can only put so much in that physical space, and we continue to refine the story, build on it with the programs, with the digital experiences. You go to our website, I mean, you can see all kinds of programs and videos that we've created. And the museum is such a draw. I mean, it brings people that have been in that life. So whether it's, an Oscar telling stories or, a Joey Cusimano coming by, or members of law enforcement. I mean, you're constantly meeting people that can.
Hold on a second. I think you just said it. He was part of that life, Joey Cusimano. Well, you just gave it away.
Yeah. So. Oh.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. There we go. That's why he's.
Why else would you be in the Black Book?
Oh, there's many reasons today you can be in the Black Book.
There's plenty of people in the Black Book that'll tell you they have no business being in the Black Book.
Right. But the only way to get out of the Black Book is to die. There's no other way out of the Black Book.
I heard that's the only way to get out of the mob as well.
There's people living today that'll.
Yeah, that used to be the case,
Right.
but
Apparently not anymore.
It's gotten a little looser. The rules are a little more relaxed.
Does the mob still exist? You can be honest with us.
I mean, organized crime absolutely still exists. It's not, it's not like it was back in Las Vegas when the properties were controlled by, mobsters from different cities and the skim was active. I mean, that was a whole different era, and there's nothing like that in the casinos now. But there certainly is organized crime, and whether it's, it's things like drugs or prostitution, or even, you look at some of the, what we might characterize as more white-collar crime, the fraud. It wouldn't surprise me if what's been going on with, identity theft and unemployment claims, if that's not organized crime behind it as well. I mean, that's...
Well, yeah. People say mob, and they think of this glamorous term, and really it's just as basic as any organized crime is what it was back in the day. But for my own education, for anyone listening that's interested, everyone knows of the 5 New York crime families. Was that what the mob was? Is that all that the mob was, or was there more to it? Or did those 5 families basically rule everything that was going on in the country related to the mob? Like in Vegas, were those 5 families in New York controlling everything here?
No, and in fact, one of the things that was really unique about Las Vegas, Las Vegas was referred to often as an open city. And the reason for that was that no one mob family was controlling the entire territory. So you could have organized crime members that were linked back to New York City in one property, or others that were linked back to the outfit in Chicago, or other cities across the country. So that was really unique here. I mean, when you talk about the 5 families, it was really focused, their influence would extend out, beyond New York, but they were really primarily focused on New York City as opposed to the outfit that was in control of Chicago.
Right.
Or the families, or the organized crime units in Kansas City, for example.
Okay.
Do you think Vegas would look a lot different today if everything stayed in place and like the people are still here, Bugsy's is still here, people like that? Do you think Vegas would look completely different as opposed to it is now?
Well, I'm sure it would. I don't know quite. It's hard to fathom that kind of.
What does your imagination say?
I don't know. I mean, gaming has evolved so much through the years, and you often hear people talk about how the good old days when the mob controlled Vegas. You get some of the old timers that talk with a lot of nostalgia. It's the business model was very different back then. I mean, so certainly the mobsters are making a lot of money off of the skim. They're so maybe could afford to give away more comps, or when people talk about it having been safer for ordinary folks, I don't know to what degree that's really accurate. But certainly, we've all seen how the marketplace has evolved. You know, as gaming has come online across the country. I mean, in fact, it's probably, you know, we're seeing only in recent weeks because of how the environment has changed that gambling, the gaming component of what we offer, is kind of, you know, taking a resurgence versus all of the other entertainment and, you know, food and beverage and other types of experiences that we've been attracting people here. So,
but I think, to answer that question, I don't think the mob made Vegas a good value back in the day. Vegas was a good value because there was no competition.
Right.
There was no casinos. You know, up until 20 years ago, there was only a couple of two states where you could gamble in the United States legally. Now you can gamble in every state except for two. Anyone know what those two states are?
Alaska,
Utah and Hawaii are the only two states where you cannot gamble legally. So, in a way, the competition changed the dynamic. Plus, cost of livings went up, so you can't charge $1.99 anymore for a shrimp cocktail because labor's more expensive, rent's more expensive, everything's gone up. So the value was changed because of cost of living and competition and cultural. I mean, you know, guys in the old days used to dress up to go out. Look at me, I'm wearing a polo shirt to work. They were wearing jackets, suits, nicely dressed like Jonathan over here.
I don't know.
Well,
you don't have to dress like that, Jonathan.
the culture changed. So I think those are the things that, more than the mob not running the city, changed that dynamic.
You know, it's interesting you talk about that. You know, one of the stories we tell in the museum is about the Kefauver Committee hearings that took place in 1950 and 1951, and we have, so the main reason why our courtroom is, and the building itself is on the National Registry of Historic Places. It was one of the locations of the Senate Investigative Committee that was led by Senator Estes Kefauver out of Tennessee, that traveled around the country and was examining and exposing organized crime. And at that time, you know, so this was a time when televisions were just becoming mainstream. And those hearings was the first time that the general public really got to see some of these very seedy characters, you know, the people like, you know, the Frank Costellos of the world. And back then...
For context, tell everyone who Frank Costello was.
So he was New York crime boss.
Right.
And, you know, well, suffice to say, not a good guy.
Right.
But people would pile into wherever they could to watch these hearings back then. And this was a time when Las Vegas was the only place where gaming was legal. But it was happening in many other places across the country. You know, it was just, it wasn't legal, it wasn't above board, but other states were contemplating legalizing it. And it was through the exposure of the mob, you know, the mob backing of these activities and what that criminal element brought along with it, that created this, you know, this extreme backlash. And as a consequence, it wasn't until the late 70s that we see Atlantic City coming online. So, you know, if it wasn't for those activities and the attention that came to it through the Senate investigation, it could very well have been that, you know, in the mid or later 50s or 60s, that other states would have had gaming, and then it would have been quite a different story for Las Vegas.
Right. Exactly right.
Jonathan, what do you think is, why are people so interested in the mob? What makes it so fascinating that for, you know, the last 50 years, people time and time again keep getting interested in the mob, and there's new documentaries coming out every year for the mob? What do you think that fascination is?
Yeah, I don't, you know, I mean, part of it is that you know, the events that have taken place are, you know, they're you know, as good as any fiction that, you know, that you could, you know, if you're into crime fiction, what's better than the real life stories? That I think part of it, you know, Jonathan was touching on a moment ago, is, you know, that you know, the way in which people kind of glorify or you know, like to think of, you know, the myth of the mob, you know, this notion of honor. And respect, and the way the families behave, kind of that cultural aspect of it. I think that's attractive to people. I think certainly, you know, people, I think for a lot of folks, like to imagine, you know, or admire that notion of taking what you want. I mean, that's in some ways it's that's kind of the American dream, right? In some ways,
They even come up with like companies, like Capone's or cigarettes, and they have like mob themed things, and it keeps coming up. I also think that there's a lot of people that want to tell their story and maybe come clean or set something straight.
I mean, and it's just been such a strong focus of popular culture. I mean, for so many years, it's been movies, television shows. We just created a new exhibit space that we call Rise of the Cartels, and it's fantastic. It's fantastic. It really
I have to come see that.
It talks about it's really important period of time towards the end of the 20th century, where you have the rise of the drug cartels, Colombia, Mexican, and the drug trade, the drug trafficking, Central America through Mexico up to the United States, and the work largely of the DEA agents that to combat that. And it's I think one of the fascinating pieces of the way in which we've put together this particular exhibit is we've looked at it largely through the lens of pop culture, and in particular the Narcos series that many people have seen on Netflix, Narcos and Narcos Mexico. And the Narcos series, which is it's not my intention to give a plug to Netflix here, but it's a phenomenal series and very factually based. And in fact, the two main characters in that, Steve Murphy and Javier Pena, real DEA agents.
Right.
And part of this exhibit that we're showing is artifacts that they have, pictures that they've taken, and the stories that they tell.
Thank you for plugging it, because I've only seen season 1, but I think there's like 3 seasons.
No, now I want to watch it.
It's fantastic, and Narcos Mexico is really well done too, and it's and that tells the story of Kiki Camarena, who was the DEA agent that had been kidnapped and tortured and murdered. We did an incredible program at the museum a year ago with his widow and other DEA agents that tell that story. And it's, again, I mean, it's these stories are so fascinating and they're real.
How do you come up with these new exhibits, and how do you continue to stay relevant?
Yeah, well, one thing we have going for us, there's no shortage of bad people out there, continuing to commit crimes. So there's certainly that. I think,
but that's interesting. That, again, going back to what you said earlier, it doesn't have to be sort of an Italian-related crime to the mafia.
Right.
It can be any form of organized crime. Will fit in there with like the drug cartels.
That's right.
And any new version of organized crime that you can tell that story.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's we have a whole section of the museum that's dedicated to organized crime today. So it's 21st century, and those types of crimes are very different. I mean, it's counterfeit goods, and you think about the illegally manufactured pharmaceutical products, illicit wildlife trade, money laundering. That there's no shortage of things. I think that the real challenge for us is making certain that we're, the proportionality is right, that we're telling the right stories that are reflective of what's important out in the world, that we tell the right, that narrative. Again, the physical space of the museum, we have 4 floors, and it is densely packed. And we start with...
I think on Lisa's question, and I didn't want to interrupt you because I think I liked where you were headed with that, so come back to the 4 floors. But in addition to staying relevant with the content, how do people today want to experience that, which is different to maybe 10 years ago with social media and the way people interact with these museums is different, isn't it?
Sure. Yeah, and I think that we try our best to cater to what people want, irrespective of what generation they're from and what they're, and I think you bring up an excellent point. I mean, for some folks, they have much greater prior knowledge, especially about Las Vegas. I mean, there's a demographic, a visitor that has been coming to Las Vegas for years and years, and they love to come in and see the old pictures and hear the music play and the Rat Pack and see the vintage Vegas style exhibits and hear those stories. That's not necessarily what a younger generation is looking for. For those folks, it may be more about the experiences that we can create. So they've heard about and they've learned about in their in school about Prohibition. Well, we actually take them into the Prohibition era and into a speakeasy environment, and you can learn about the culture of that time period, but also experience it with the cocktails, with the the film clips, with the
phone calls.
The phone calls.
That is the best part of because like when you're watching movies and there's the FBI agent with the headphones and sitting there listening to these phone calls, and there you are sitting there listening to these That is by far the best part, and that is what I
love those too. The wiretaps. Oh, I mean there's nothing like listening to these guys and how they got nabbed.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, have you seen Fear City, New York versus Mafia? What were your thoughts on it?
Jonathan, you too.
Really, really well done documentary, and I cannot get over. I think so two things about it. So first, I love this is a little nuance, but I love how the beginning of that series talks about how the FBI learns to use the legislative tool. So it's really about, at first, how do you stop these guys? You can only arrest and prosecute, the soldier, the person that did the immediate crime, and it's not until they understand how to use the RICO statute that they can actually go after, the whole infrastructure. That's fascinating. Mm-hmm. But what I also thought was so great about that series is, these FBI agents that are doing, figuring out how to be the cable guy or the phone guy and plant the
man. I can't. I love the way that this shows the importance of the RICO Act, and then also I can't imagine going into Paul Castellano to his house and messing with his TV and putting in and
having one of his guys hold the flashlight.
While you're bugging his house. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be going in there and doing that to his house. But I thought it was excellent. I thought it was very well done, and I learned a lot about the history and that life in that show, and the wiretaps. Back then the technology was basic, but they got what they needed out of those wiretaps, and
yeah, they sure did. Yeah. It's so interesting to me, also, just as thinking about that, how it's rare that things end well for any of these guys,
right?
And how that, usually that would be a recruitment challenge, like in most businesses,
mm-hmm.
But it's
they had no problem. They had no problem.
Hey, Jonathan, can I ask you what your favorite mob movie is and how much Oscar pays you to say Casino?
Well, I mean, Casino is a brilliant movie, and it is the quintessential Las Vegas mob movie. I mean, it's hard not to love that movie. It's there's so much of it that is factually based, and to have characters like Oscar playing himself in it is just amazing.
You also mentioned Frank Costello, and that's the Departed, right? That's a really big kind of one too. Would you say that one is loosely factual as opposed to what you're saying?
Much more loosely. Much more loosely. I think it's such a great genre. I mean,
The Irishman, that was another good. Did you see The Irishman?
I did. I thought it was all right. We had a great debate. We had some experts in our courtroom for a program talking about, to what degree do we subscribe to the Frank Sheeran. I heard you paint houses account of how
that he killed killed Hoffa.
Yeah, and I think that's there's pretty strong arguments to be made against that. We've got some great blogs right now on our website. This investigative journalist Dan Moldia, who's been on this case for over 40 years, puts forth a pretty strong argument for Hoffa being buried in Jersey City, back Jersey.
Not killed by Sheeran.
No. But it's
Interesting.
we will never know.
We'll never know.
We'll never
Right.
know.
Crazy.
Do you have a favorite exhibit at the museum?
A favorite exhibit. It's like.
Well, hold on. Wait. Did you answer the question? Your favorite mob movie? Casino. Is that what you're sticking with?
I don't know. Favorite. I mean, a casino's great. I love. Bronx Tale is fantastic. Just watched that one about Danny Green. Was that the Kill the Irishman? That's a good one.
Yeah, I will say what you mentioned about casino to me as a casino operator is the accuracy and the way they depict the casino operations was incredibly accurate. You don't normally get that in a lot of the shows, and the understanding of surveillance and certain elements of pit bosses and their functions. But it was very accurate. It was good. But go on. Okay, so favorite part of the museum?
Oh man, the
Valentine's Day wall. I like the Valentine's Day wall.
So there's one. I absolutely love that. I mean, I think everybody's familiar with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre back in Chicago in 1929. It's the Al Capone's gang and Bugs Moran's gang are in this deep conflict, and 7 individuals associated with Bugs Moran's gang are in a warehouse, and it's believed, it's not proven, but it's believed that it was members of Capone's gang that lined them up against the wall and shot him. And such a brazen and brutal crime, and gathered so much attention nationally, even internationally, and really regarded as a turning point. I think if you consider the Prohibition era, earlier in the Prohibition era, people are generally not that not necessarily having a problem with the mobsters. I mean, in fact, the mobsters are getting them what they want with the booze, but as the violence grows, it becomes public sentiment sways against. And I think what I love also about what we've done with that exhibit is it's not just that you can see the wall and hear the story about the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, but right around the corner from that, I don't know if you've seen this exhibit, but we have all the ballistics evidence that was recovered from that scene. So the actual bullets, bullet fragments, coroner's reports, and this was, I love this. I get so excited.
Good.
I get excited about this, and this is that.
It's my favorite piece too.
Well, and it's not just the event, but I think it's emblematic of the story that we tell, this journey from the start of the 20th century to present day. And it's not just what the criminals are doing, but it's how law enforcement, both the criminals and law enforcement are evolving in this constant struggle. So you see in that ballistics evidence exhibit, you see one of the very first cases in which ballistic science, forensic science was used to try to solve a crime. It was Calvin Goddard, who's considered the father of modern ballistics, who was actually in New York at the time. And because when that massacre occurred, the people in Chicago, there were some eyewitness accounts that Chicago police officers had entered that warehouse. So people, some of the local business leaders were concerned it was an inside job. They brought Goddard out from New York City to conduct the investigation. And so this was, here's a guy who was like for one of the first times where they would, you've seen it on TV now probably all the time, when they have these crime labs, they shoot the bullet into the gel or the tank of water.
It shows you what
comparing
happens.
the striations from so he was doing it back then with a compound microscope. They would shoot the bullet into a wastebasket full of cotton to try to retrieve the test bullets, and then look at the striations under a compound microscope. I mean, this is back in, in the 20s, 1920s.
Very interesting. Thank you for that.
Sorry,
It sounds like you've become an expert in
in
organized crime.
Not an expert.
The question that I would have for you is,
not at all.
I met you 10 years ago when you moved out here. I don't know if you remember, we were at Downtown Cocktail Room.
Yeah.
You remember
I
that?
actually remember that. Yeah, Michael Cornthwaite
We
was
were
out there.
we were at downtown cocktail room having drinks together.
Yes, we
You
were.
had just moved out
Is
here.
this from the first episode? Is that what you were saying? Is this
No,
the second?
This is a few years later.
I was living down at the Soho Lofts at the time.
You did live in Soho Lofts?
Yeah.
That's right.
You know who
because you had to move your
Sam Cherry was
yeah.
hooked me up with my first place in Las Vegas.
Exactly. So and then your family moved out here later on.
That's right. That's right.
But when you moved out here, you
I
didn't
didn't
know
go out to the downtown cocktail room much after that.
after that, right?
That was I had that
One and
yeah,
done. But we met there, and you've basically learned organized crime, the history of it, over the last 10 years. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've been certainly been aware. Certainly, watched all the movies. I have a particular interest in the science side. I mean, that's I spent a lot of time in a science museum, so so I get particularly excited about things like that. But yeah, Jonathan, I think I think that's fair.
Yeah, because I mean, you were a museum guy, come out here, don't know anyone, and make a life in downtown Las Vegas. It's pretty cool.
Very cool.
Would you look back on the last 10 years and say it's as you expected it to be?
No, I mean, I don't know what I expected it to be, but I will say it's been it's been a pretty magical experience. I consider myself to be an extraordinarily lucky guy.
Right.
I mean, I've had this has been a tremendous opportunity, and it's just right from the start. I mean, the project was surrounded by such incredible people. It's
right.
Well, I mean, you look at the Mob Museum, and I think that brings a lot of people from the Strip to downtown. I think it's just as part of a contributor as the rest of what's going on Fremont Street is you part of that revitalization project.
I mean,
amazing.
That's how it started. I mean, that was the I think when Oscar first contemplated what it could be, it was was part of the revitalization of downtown. I mean, he always tells that story about how it wasn't going to be an art museum. He didn't want watercolors. Wasn't going to do it.
Could have been an ice cream museum.
But it was always, how do you do something that is special, that's uniquely Las Vegas, and that helps kind of shine a light on downtown? If
you can say, how is the museum doing post-pandemic versus pre?
Well, not nearly as well.
Okay, well, none of us are. But
pandemics are not good for business. That's what, yeah.
Okay.
No, seriously. Yeah, we. It's we're very much dependent upon people being in market, and we can. As you mentioned, we can get people to come down from the Strip. 2/3 of our visitors come from the Strip. It doesn't, people don't have to be right in our backyard, but we have to have people in market to be able to get them to come to the museum. And as our numbers
they're not coming right now.
They're not where we need them to be.
Yeah.
I think we had coming into the year, we were riding high. I mean, I know you guys are doing the same thing, but we had 2019 was off the charts for us.
Yep.
We had over 400,000 visitors. We had done over 100 public programs. We had best years ever for our facility rentals, our speakeasy business. I mean, we had the most attendees in a given month for 16 months straight. We had gone, the best of its kind. I mean, the trajectory was, was terrific. It's not that now. I think we all recognize that this is, it's going to be a bit of a long slog to get it back. But
I'm not sure people realize that 2/3 of your customers come from the Strip. That's great for down here. I mean, that's great to know.
Yeah.
That's important. I think it's a big driver, like Gary was saying. Tourism downtown. I mean, well, again, pre all of this, and we'll get back to that in time.
Sure.
But that's a significant part of downtown. Then, have you found the support downtown to be good?
When we first opened, there were a lot of skeptics. A lot of people that were unsure what the Mob Museum was going to be. And I think, where we are now, we're very well embraced. I mean, I think I think we're all proud, all of us that are associated with the organization, that we're, we help enhance the cultural landscape of Las Vegas. We're not competing with what you do over here. I mean, this is, it's a complementary piece. We do a lot of community-oriented programs. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We do educational outreach to the schools. We do a lot of free days for the general public. So whether it's it's a fully free day or it's our community safety forum programs that we do, where we people can come visit the museum for free and they can learn about something that's very, very practical, ways that they can improve their safety. There's a lot I think that we do that just helps just like we all do around here, just enhancing our community.
Since we're talking about downtown, is it more expensive to buy the St. Valentine's Day wall or a wall that Banksy tagged on? You're a museum guy, so I want to know, because we have a lot of art downtown here, and I would like to see more mobster art or something cool like that. But
you might have to be careful that Vansky thing would go up in flames before you where you actually get it right. I don't know.
What did you bring with you today?
Oh, I brought goodies.
Yay.
I brought goodies for Jonathan here.
Wow, thank you.
So first of all, you're familiar with our moonshine.
Moonshine, very familiar with that.
Which
Delicious.
I don't know if is it on your. I don't see it in Oscars. I don't know why it's not here because
no.
we buy it. It is available. It is this. You can get it through the Johnson Brothers.
We should start drinking it now.
I also brought you a Mob Museum mask.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And then, we've also been making down in our distillery hand sanitizer.
Oh, that's right. I connected our team with the lady at your at the museum who's selling that to see if we could sell some of it here.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for doing that. So this is the 1 ounce bottle. We do 2 ounce, 6 ounce, and then we have the commercial size, gallon size. That would be perfect for your little dispenser over there.
Okay. I like the branding, though.
You could, if you like, we could also put your custom label on it.
Oh, you do that as well?
Yeah.
And you do this all on site?
That's right.
All in the distillery?
And then what's kind of neat, too? To see on the cap, we put the little stopper up there. It's a stylus. People don't want to touch the touch screen. They can...
They can gamble with that.
How about that? That's
Do you
right.
start with the same alcohol for the moonshine as for the hand sanitizer?
No. This is the FDA approved formula. So it's not a gel; it's a liquid. You're welcome to try some, and it's 80%.
It's a gel, not a liquid.
It is a liquid. It's a liquid, not a gel.
What goes into turning a distillery into, from producing moonshine into doing hand sanitizer? I mean, I'm sure that's something a lot of distilleries are, making that change for right now, as some bars are closed. But what is that process like?
And also, can we add that you have a distillery that was for moonshine, and now it's saving with antibacterial. Like, they got it right, Like, moonshiners were kind of seen as outlaws, but it looks like they got it right now.
I should also. I'm going to answer your question in a second, but I also want to mention, when you buy one of these, we're also giving away sanitizer to medical organizations locally. So we're also trying to, it's not just about supporting us; it's also about supporting other local organizations. But it is if you were to manufacture in large quantities out of a distillery like ours, it's not easy to get up to the proof that you need here. I mean, that's a small distillery like ours really isn't made for that. We have our pot still. It's not that high. It's a kind of this turnip style pot still. You actually, to get the large quantities of ethanol at that, at the proof you need for this, you have to run it through quite a few times. Okay. Yeah. So it's certainly a lot easier to convert if you are a much more industrial sized distillery. For us, generally speaking, we're producing 750 milliliter bottles. We're these 50 milliliter bottles, and we're doing it in quantities that are good enough for the guests that are coming through the museum on a daily basis, and then also doing some local distribution, a nice souvenir product. But we're not, and for our distillery tours also, we do it as a special experience for guests that come to the museum. They can also learn about moonshining and sample different types of, our moonshine products.
Let's jump into some social media questions.
Sure.
At RG Bowl 1 asks, who was the most notorious mobster ever in Vegas and why?
The most notorious mobster in Vegas.
And why?
And why? I'm not quite sure, and I'm qualified to say who the most notorious mobster in Vegas would be. I mean, certainly...
Well, I guess maybe take the word notorious out. Who's the one Vegas mobster that stands out to you?
I mean, Tony Spilotro is, is a name that comes up constantly. I mean, that's...
Killed 26 people and never got found guilty for any.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
There's, Spilotro, Lefty Rosenthal. I mean, those two, you kind of... they're hard not to mention them in the same breath, right?
Right.
I mean... yeah, I think I'd go with Tony Spilotro.
Are you still doing that law enforcement exhibit over there?
Oh yeah,
the live one.
So yeah, that's gotten more attention for, I think, obvious reasons of late than ever before. I mean, it's we also have some programs. So for folks that don't know, we have a whole experience space that's about use of force, and you can actually go through a training simulation that's based on the types of training law enforcement officers get, both digital, so you get a duty belt and a firearm, and the firearm is it's got a CO2 cartridge and a laser, so it's got the look and feel of a firearm. You go through a couple of digital scenarios. You have a training officer with you.
I found the experience very intense, actually.
I think it took 10 years off my life.
Yeah, it's and then especially when you get to the actor that's shows you what the reality-based training is. I mean, the intention is to demonstrate how an officer needs to be trained to read the situation and to try to de-escalate. And ideally, use your voice, not your firearm, to the extent possible, and to diffuse the situation.
But those split seconds are what stresses you out. I mean,
it definitely underscores the need for training. But yeah, we have that experience space, and we also have some programs that we are the first of a 3-part series later this month that's about the future of policing. So we'll be talking about
current affairs.
Yeah.
I'd like to get your sense on where do you see the land. Forget the pandemic for a second, if you can. I know it's hard to do that, but given what we're going through. But where do you see the museum going in the next 5 to 10 years? Where do you see downtown headed, and how does that all tie together?
I mean, I'm actually quite optimistic about it. I mean, I think like long term, I'm very bullish. I think the pandemic is terrible. I don't want to underscore, especially for people that have fallen ill, and you hear terrible stories of people that have either been sick or known somebody that's been sick or lost a loved one and wasn't able to visit that person, or the people that have been out of work. I mean, the economic devastation is horrible. It's horrible. But I will say, at the same time, a couple things about it. I mean, one, it's not going to last forever. We will have treatments. We will have a vaccine that's going to happen, and we know that people are going to want to get back out there afterwards. People are going crazy, being cooped up. I mean, I know. I mean, we all know that. We know that. Mm-hmm. Once people feel safe, broadly, then tourism, hospitality will come back. And I think the other thing that we got going for us is that, we're all learning a lot. I don't know about, what you guys have been up to, but, as you have to, it's like necessity is the mother of invention, right? I mean, you don't have your standard business activities to drive you. So what do? You figure out, what else can we sell? How can we compete differently online? You know, how can we do these things that maybe we didn't have the capability for or the focus before? And we're building that capacity. Our capacity to run a great museum the way in which we used to isn't going away, but we're building new skills, that are going to bode well for us in the future. So I think, and you look out here, and development hasn't stopped. You got Circa next door is still going up. There's a new tower coming across the street from us with the downtown Grand. I think we will continue to build. I think I think for us in Las Vegas, putting aside the marketplace and the business, economics, I think for us the bigger challenge is to think about, what do we do as a community to make us better equipped to withstand shocks, to the tourism industry, because I think that's where we are far too susceptible as a community to, we're a one-trick pony. We're great at it. We're great at it.
Right.
We're the best at it, but a lot of eggs in one basket.
That's right.
Well, if you find yourself in Las Vegas, definitely do not miss a trip to the Mob Museum. It is number 20 on TripAdvisor's top museums in the entire United States. Thank you so much for joining us today on the corner of Main Street.
Thank you.
And you can learn more about the Mob Museum at www.themobmuseum.org. So what did we learn today?
Well, I think besides the fascinating side of what Jonathan has to say about the mob, I love one that he moved out here to run a mob museum with no knowledge of the mob, but learned that over the 10 years. And I think from my perspective, having seen it evolve from nothing and just an idea that it was into what it became, which is a very successful museum, as I think you said, top 20 ranking. But I think its visitation was very substantial. And I think as a downtown person and seeing how it gave downtown a different aspect, some people just assume downtown is casinos and older history and neon, but having this a museum that's legitimate and a destination from around the country, and we hear people all the time that are staying here that go down there to visit it. I think it's just an important part of the downtown landscape now. It's become that, and Jonathan's done a great job with his team and board to deliver that.
Yeah, it's amazing. I didn't realize that 2/3 of his visitation is coming right from the Strip. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. It's bringing eyes to downtown. So,
what I didn't know was that Las Vegas was considered open land, right? You were asking about the 5 families, and I thought that was a very interesting question about, because you always hear about how the mob started or it was mob consumed, but it was really open territory, and you could build whatever. You were associated with somebody, but it wasn't districts, or it wasn't, what do they call them in New York? Boroughs? Yeah, boroughs. It wasn't divided like that. It was open. That was very interesting.
Yeah, I thought also what's so interesting about the Mob Museum, when I first went there, I thought it was only going to be about Vegas mob, but there is so much more to learn. I love what he was talking about, the future of organized crime. I can't wait to see the exhibit on the pandemic and what's going on behind that.
Yeah, the museum's constantly evolving. I've been there 3 times over the last 5 years, and there's always something new and something fresh as an exhibit over there. It's amazing.
I want to be in the courtroom with Oscar just to kind of get a sense of what it was like to be in that room with him, like for a minute, because we were listening and he was saying Oscar used to look down and what's going on with this building, what are we doing? It'd just be cool to be in there with that guy. That's history.
Just come to an Oscar's dinner series and you can hear him recount those stories when we can do them again.
We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, please let us know how we're doing and send us your questions. Just email us at podcast@plazahotelcasino.com, or you can go right to the top and tweet Jonathan at Jonathan Jossel. Also, please follow us on social. On Twitter and Instagram, it's at PlazaPod, and on Facebook, find us at Plaza Podcast. We'll see you next time from right here on the corner of Main Street.